On Tuesday, Election Day, Leeza called on behalf of Rashid Rana and invited me to put together a 15-minute talk for Rashid's slot at 4:30 on Saturday, today at the Asia Society. My presentation, Leeza said, could be my own content, but my name would not be on the program. I am, a part of Rashid's recent and ongoing project, Present Elsewhere, which, quote, transposes images from one time and place to another through manipulation, repetition, and rearrangement, end quote. In this case, Rashid is he who is transposed, and I, that which is manipulated. Despite the discomfort of acquiescing to this task with partial agency, I agreed, and the following is the result. In the spirit of ACAW, the following are 7 open-ended and extended questions which I feel important and generative for the future of political art. They are in part a response to the US election, which serendipitously and perhaps tragically coincided with Leeza's invitation. So question number 7. Modernism valorized outliers. Art stars aplenty populate the contemporary stage. Both modern and contemporary eras overlook and underestimate the middle, the broadest swath of the populace. Yet as demagoguery erodes moderate politics in the United States, might it be incumbent on artists today to align with the center, to embrace characteristics of middle age and middle management, of being middle class? How can hard work, sacrifice, and commitment to establish goals describe and redirect creative activity in 2016? Can growing up revitalize engaged art by recasting radical art as responsible art? If so, responsible to what and to what end? Question number 6. As Facebook feeds replace canonical history, self-actualization trumps the acquisition of knowledge in education, and advancement drives internships more than contribution to a host organization. What civic, social, and cultural responsibilities remain? 40 years after institutional critique's high noon, might it not be time to revisit the value of institutions, the public, the commons? What contemporary forms would these take, and what art addresses, occupies, supports, and embodies them? 5. Assertions of the end of art and passionate counterclaims of its persistence punctuate art's history from the late 1960s through the mid-1980s. Rather than add another riposte to this back and forth, or to reiterate the debate, might it be our task now to contextualize art's putative death within myriad broader concurrent ends? Of history, Francis Fukuyama; of ideology, Walter Ben Michaels; and indeed of mankind, Donna Haraway. Might this broadened scope allow for a measured, nuanced approach to the end, now contemporaneous with social, economic, political, scientific, and philosophical developments? Might it also radically expand the ground onto which art's future history might be mapped, and ultimately redirect attention from recounting endings and beginnings towards addressing the problem of what constitutes the contemporary and how to rebuild after? Question number 4. In the 1970s, institutional critique, which remains the academic figure for political art, questioned the museum's authority and attenuated chronological history's supremacy. By the late 1990s, artists could, and often did, occupy the position of curator and gallerist. They moved up the hierarchy from labor to management. But this turned out to be a two-way street. The 1990s also witnessed curators like Hans-Ulrich Obrist emerge from the haze of administration and into the lumen. Today, collectors are heralded as artistic visionaries, their proper names perambulating from museum walls to exhibition titles. So the becoming artists of curators and collectors paralleled the institutionalization of alternative spaces like PS1, in 2000 rebranded MoMA PS1. Luc Boltanski and Yves Capello's 1999 The New Spirit of Capitalism further trace the inexorable mainstreaming of the margins, capitalism's hallmark, through transformations of the subject. For them, while the contemporary model of the freelancer resists bureaucracy and forms of organization endemic to an earlier stage of capitalism, it dovetails with advanced network capitalism's salient methodologies. Liberated, individual, and spontaneous, the freelancer, for instance, lacks company-issued healthcare and is expected to be passionate about her work. The question is this: might artists, curators, and scholars, all of us here, work through this inevitable institutionalization and with this given subject position, rather than bemoaning assimilation or wallowing in the fact that we are unwitting, paradigmatic subjects of neoliberal capitalism? Might once marginal spaces now constitute institutional instruments for change? Done constructively, might the task of representing contemporary subjectivity found a new civic art? Question number 3. In his landmark 1973 book, The Anxiety of Influence, Yale professor Harold Bloom famously proposed Satan as the model for the strong poet. Satan, once an angel, and despite having been struck down, nonetheless aspires to be more powerful than God. Great poetry comes from knowing that one has fallen or is falling, and that one will fail to escape this fate, yet refusing to succumb and rallying what remains. More recently, in 2013, Simon Critchley in The Faith of the Faithless proposed Christ as the model for the romantic artist. Like Christ, who transfigures suffering, the artist self-realizes through the experience of pain. The subject formation of artists occurs during an unending wrestle with the infinite ethical demand of love, the unfulfillable demand to be Christ-like while being human. What if neither Satan's defiance nor Christ's compassion begets contemporary art, nor for that matter Adam, a direct lineage to whom traditional patriarchy, kings and male heads of families, derives authority? What if the model is Saint Joseph, a consummate adult who willingly takes responsibility as Jesus' foster father? Joseph exhibits such adult characteristics as consistent work over bursts of genius, modesty over self-aggrandizement, discipline over self-indulgence, and sacrifice over solipsism. What would an art practice modeled on Joseph rather than Satan, Christ, or Adam yield? Question 2. Cultural legacy pejoratively conjures a past that populates the present and that tenaciously, sometimes surreptitiously, directs the future. But artists, scholars, curators, and producers can, should, leave a legacy or strive to. This admonishment risks espousing arrogance, even delusion. But envisioning oneself an initiator rather than an inheritor is more generative and less restrictive. Too many artists position themselves at the conclusion, arrogant in its own way, a result of overeducation and of the myriad ends that pervaded the 90s, of painting, of history, of meta-narratives, of ideology. If not manically mourning these myriad ends, to borrow Yves Lembois' apt description of much 90s art, then what? Neither is the model of the avant-garde, itself a cultural legacy of 20th century Europe, an option. After all, much advanced criticism of the past 30 years, including Bois' own, pointed out that capitalism dooms successful avant-gardes to assimilation, to inscription into the main, to institutionalization. In contrast, the legacy leaving I propose is synthetic and unabashed in its ambition to become the institution. It is dynastic, not subversive. In this, might it perhaps be peculiarly Chinese? To examine legacy leaving in art would, first, mean a broad examination of Chinese state, or better, paternal capitalism, in contrast to Northern American neoliberal capitalism. It would entail doing this with an acknowledgement that the global economic power and balance is shifting perhaps from west to east. Might this rebalance of power open up emergent and nuanced positions within post-colonial discourse? As well, might it allow for power to be spoken about as something to wield responsibly, and not just fight against? As Master Wenzong said, states led by hegemons employ wisdom to do battle. States led by kings employ righteousness to do battle. States led by lords on high employ virtue to do battle. States led by emperors employ non-action to do battle. First question. Can the remote exist autonomously? This is Rashid Rana's question. And his absence today gives one answer. Yes, Rashid exists right now in Lahore, autonomous from us here at the Asia Society. Yet, his name graces this segment, and I feel his spirit and his artwork guides us. And we saw a piece of his earlier, a play of David's Oath of the Horatii. He, Rashid, is here even if physically absent, remotely. We are entangled. Entanglement, once the purview of religion, all beings under God, became, in more secular ages, the purview of the sciences, or of ethics, extended into ecology and environmentalism. We are linked to one another because of our humanness, our humaneness, and further to rivers and to trees and to mountains and to space. Today, and in the near future, might it be technology that facilitates entanglement? I recently listened for the first time to Taylor Swift's 15. When you're 15, she sings, and someone tells you they love you, you're going to believe them. My question, to add to Rashid's, is this. Can we, as adults, tap into the raw emotions of our 15-year-old and harness them towards socially transformative art? Now, Rashid's question, can the remote exist autonomously? And mine, can the raw emotions of a 15-year-old revitalize or form the basis of a contemporary political art, initially are unrelated. One imagines the author or asker of the first, book in hand, musing en route from Istanbul to Hong Kong for a biennial. One imagines the protagonist of the second, iPhone in hand, alone in his or her bedroom, awash in just outgrown stuffed animals, dreaming of first love. Yet both involve, I argue, a rapid blink-of-the-eye jump in scale and from near to far. The ravenous beauty of Rashid's phrasing is the implication that we can envision that which is outside of us, that something can exist autonomously from us, occupy a world untouched by us, unfiltered through our own eyes, feeling, sense, thought, what Simon Critchley has recently termed in After Finitude, the great outdoors, and yet have this thing autonomous and remote from us somehow touch or concur with our world. Taylor Swift reverses this. She explodes what is interior, specific, and unique, the chemical pangs of first love, outward into, pejoratively, what we would call cliché, problematically, what we would call the universal, or, and this is what I'm proposing, positively, the social. From cybertwee to sad girl theory, emotions that isolate, like heartbreak, are now more than ever recounted and contoured by social media. Might the social part of social media open a route for the raw emotions of youth, their seemingly self-involved and solipsistic musings online, to become a new form of socially transformative art? Thank you.